I'm Theo.
And I'm Juliette.
And this is Apologies Accepted.
We offer an entertaining look at some of the big issues in history by examining public apologies of the famous and infamous.
We're looking at politicians, serial killers, actors, and you.
Send us a public apology you would like to make, and we'll read it on the air and give you a chance to redeem yourself or just get some guilt off your shoulders.
We're here for you. Once a week, maybe more if you're really, really sorry.
Everybody. This is Apologies Accepted, the podcast. And I'm not Theo.
And I am Juliette. So
you are.
I am.
Well, who am I?
I don't know. It's open for debate. It is disputed.
There's two of us. That's awesome. I guess you get to do all of my work for me.
No, I quit.
I can relate to that feeling. So what's shaking, Bacon?
Oh, my God. All right. So as you have heard for the last half hour easily, the house, light switches, sprinkler system. All I could talk about is this stupid house and how I am heroically,
beautiful house, and
bravely repairing things by myself or hiring people to repair things.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that is literally all I have. However, I did come back to Austin last night. And the plan is get a moving pod. And for our international listeners, I imagine pods are everywhere, but instead of a moving truck, it's just kind of like the shell of a truck that shows up and they sit in your driveway. And it's so an empty shipping freight container, and you pack whatever you want in it, and then you lock it up, and then they come and they haul it away. And then you never see it again because it gets lost. Is kind of what happens. But I've got a cure for that. I'm going to stick an air tracker in it because genius, cool. Super
you
smart.
Are genius.
Yeah, why not? I got him. And let's see. So I've been in a great big house that has 2 couches, and basically that's kind of it. 2 couches and like a basket with some blankets in it. And we're trying to get it staged so that we can start getting it rented on the vacation market. Yay. And so I walked into our house last night, and it was like walking into Alibaba's like treasure trove cavern. What? I have never seen so many things. I was just like, wow. And for our entire existence together, James has said, you are a hoarder. And I have always said, no, I just recognize beauty and I cure it when I see it.
Absolutely.
I'm a fucking hoarder. I am, oh my God. You're
not even close. Your home is beautiful. You have wonderful things.
I have a hand.
You're a maximalist. You're not even a maximalist.
That's
though.
It. That is,
but you're
totally
not even there. I mean, your place is pristine, so it's amazing.
It is clean, and I don't have stacks of newspapers. But am I headed that way? Arguments could be made. Like even now, I've got to say, having lived in a minimalist environment,
right.
Yeah, holy fuckballs, man. They're no lie. I have shit that is just meant to hold other shit. Like I've got trunks and wooden boxes that are decorative, and I'll just put all these marbles from the 1800s in this box.
Yeah.
Why?
Same. I know.
I need those marbles. For sure. They're beautiful.
Of course.
But yeah. Yes. So I'm trying to think of anything that's like not the house and not how I'm a hero and so brave for like rewiring some light switches. And I can't.
That's the bravest thing anyone could ever do.
I am going to tell you that I have reached the point, and don't panic, America and the world, where so some electricians came out. There was an outdoor light, and I flicked the switch and nothing happened. I couldn't figure it out. Circuit breakers all looked fine. So I called an electrician, and they came out and they did some things for me that were pretty minor that I had some light switches I installed and they quit working. And the guys were like, yeah, it was because this thing and that thing. And okay, great, whatever. So it went beyond the red wire goes to the red wire, the black wire goes to the black wire. Went beyond that kind of stuff, right? They're like, they created a bypass over here because this light switch used to be connected to whatever, right?
Oh, wow.
Cool. So it was sort of like, you couldn't have fixed this if you didn't know this, but I'm going to show you now how. And I was like, I'm not paying attention.
Exactly.
I'm never going to worry about a bypass anything. Red goes to red, black goes to black. If it doesn't work, then I'm calling you.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, so the guys were like, yeah, that outdoor light, like everything's fine. It's just the fixture itself has burned out. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just go buy a new fixture. And they said, yep, but we have to leave here in 15 minutes because whatever the company I hired, they've got this like window thing they do. And so they quote you a flat rate and then they show up and then, and then that's that. Right. And they've got another appointment. So they've got to leave. So great. So I was like, all right, cool. So I have to do this on my own. And they were like, yeah, but you know, this will be easy. And I was like, yeah, it will be. And so I went to Home Depot and I bought a light fixture. Right. Of course I had to turn it into, which is the best light fixture for that space. It's most like blah, blah, blah. Couldn't find anything. Just grabbed one without turning off the circuit breakers.
Oh, no.
I was like, you just unscrew it and you hold the two wires together and you recap it. I do not recommend that anybody does this.
Oh, my God.
However, flawlessly executed.
Oh, good.
In
You're still
115
alive.
degrees of heat. Yes.
Oh, my God. I don't know how you do anything in that heat.
On a step ladder, on gravel. Like I was just begging to fall face.
You should be dead.
I should be.
Yeah.
I should be. But this is proof that God looks after drunkards and fools, because I was super drunk when I did it too. No, I was not. Anyway, all right. So that's my story. That has nothing to do about the house, which had everything to do about the house. What about you? What's shaking bacon?
I ordered a chair. Well, Brent ordered me a chair.
You shut up. How did Brent order you a chair? Did he get tired of hearing you talk about how you don't have a chair?
Maybe a little bit, but I was like, he's like, why don't you just order that chair that you like? And I was like, well, cause it's $700 and I'm working part-time still and I don't have $700 to spend on the chair. And he's like, do you want me to buy you a chair? I was like, sure, you can buy me a chair. So we found a chair, I guess at Pottery Barn or Crate and Barrel or one of those places. And it doesn't have arms, so I'm probably going to hate it, but it's a simple chair. It's small enough to fit in the kitchen without being too, obtrusive or whatever. And it's just going to be fine. It's a nice chair. I like it. It's cool. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to be happy. So I'm very excited that I have a chair. I will have a chair and I won't be crouched down on the floor anymore because the lift thing doesn't work on this old chair that I have, which I probably paid $50 for. So chair coming. Also, I may have mentioned last week that I'm going to New York in December for Christmas, not for Christmas, but around Christmas time. So I'll be there around Christmas time. But I also, in the middle of the night, last night or the night before, booked another trip to New York in October because Robert Downey Jr. is going to be in a play at Lincoln Center, and I am a big Robert Downey Jr. fan. So I'll be going back to New York a couple times this year before the end of the year, which will be totally fun, and I'm totally excited. But that's really all the bacon I've got, except it's freezing here. I'm sitting in my kitchen, and it's like 56 degrees. So I've got extra socks on and extra wrap, and I'm just about to die of the cold. So but other than that, everything is good. That
is so weird to me that it is cold anywhere because I
know.
am only surrounded by flames.
Crazy. But yes, that's what you get for deciding to live in the Southwest.
Yeah. I wish somebody had warned me.
You wish there was some way of knowing in advance what it was going to be like.
There's no way to know anything.
There's no way to ever know anything.
There is no way to, which this sort of is a nice bridge to our topic. There's no way to know anything, and therefore it is easy to become offended when you are presented with something that like maybe you should know some stuff about. Sure.
So we'll talk about our story then for the week. And our story is the Paris 2024 Olympics Committee has issued a formal apology following backlash over a controversial artwork, which was interpreted by some as depicting the Last Supper. The piece, which was intended as part of the cultural program for the Games, drew significant criticism for its portrayal of the iconic religious scene, allegedly. The scene during Friday's ceremony last week, said by some to depict the Last Supper, featured DJ and producer Barbara Butch, an LGBTQ plus icon who calls herself a love activist. Butch was wearing a silver headdress that looked like a halo as she got the party going on a footbridge across the Seine. Drag artists, dancers, and others flanked Butch on both sides. As CBS News correspondent Elaine Cobb reported, the specific part of the ceremony that caused the offense was, in fact, intended to depict Dionysus, the Greek god of wine. It was reportedly based on the Feast of the Gods, a 17th century painting by Dutch artist Jan Harmens van Bielert that hangs in the Magna Museum in Dijon, eastern France. The painting depicts an assembly of Greek gods on Mount Olympus for a banquet to celebrate the marriage of Thetis and Peleus. The figure seated at the table in the center has a halo of light behind his head. Thomas Jolly, the opening ceremony director, insisted in an interview with France's BFM TV that the Last Supper was not the inspiration behind the scene, explaining that Dionysus arrives at the table because he is the Greek god of celebration, adding that the particular sequence was entitled Festivity. Jolly said, the idea was to create a big pagan party and link with the god of, I can't talk today. The idea was to create a big pagan party and link with the god of Mount Olympus. And you will never find in me or in my work any desire of mocking anyone. My wish is to be subversive, nor to mock or to shock. Most of all, I wanted to send a message of love, a message of inclusion, and not at all to divide. The artwork, however, was met with widespread disapproval from various religious groups and members of the public who felt it was disrespectful. The French Bishops' Conference, which represents the country's Catholic bishops, said in a statement that the opening ceremony included, quote, scenes of mockery and derision of Christianity, and an influential American Catholic, Bishop Robert Barron of Minnesota, called it a, quote, gross mockery. It's ridiculous.
And I'm just going to jump in there and say I would expect a bit more from Catholic bishops. You are supposed to be educated, guys. You're supposed to know some history. You're supposed to know where your root origins come from in your religion, right?
Absolutely.
And you're either lying and disingenuous or you were poorly educated.
Or both.
Or both. Or three things and you're a liar.
And you're dumb. Yeah, I agree. I think it's exactly what you said. It's ridiculous that anyone would take offense at this, and people people are just looking to be offended.
Or any Catholic priest. I can't speak for all the people that are going to go to hell being the Protestants, right? So, yeah. And I would like to think that if I had watched, because of course I didn't watch the Olympics at all, right?
No,
not even for a second.
Even for a second.
But if I had seen the opening ceremony, that I would have been like, oh, yes, this is a wonderful incorporation of, I probably would not have. I probably would have been like, this is a little less suppery. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
But I would have known that Catholic France is not going to be mocking any Christian anything.
Yeah.
It's because I'm smart. Yeah.
And since when is I mean, it's more of an homage, I would think, than a mockery anyway. And why would you assume that something was a mockery? Just because gay people are involved, probably.
Right. That's it exactly. Right. The outrage is the idea of inclusivity.
Yeah.
How dare you? You should have known. The minute you try and include everybody, you're going to piss off half of everybody.
The Republican half, the conservative half, maybe less than half. Fingers crossed.
Well, and so that my favorite expression, and I will say,
yes. On
the other hand, they also, I mean, I might point at people and be like, you should be educated and you should recognize blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, you were not wrong, Christians, to think that there was some parallel between Dionysus and Jesus, because there is. And guess who came first? By about 2,000 years. Just guess. Take a guess. Probably even 6,000 years. Take a guess. It was Dionysus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've got a little bit to share.
Oh,
which
no.
I think, I love how you're like excited. And then
I'm excited.
I'm going to say, I'm sorry, because you know how I am about Greek mythology. I was
Oh,
like,
it's exciting.
there's one thing I care about, and it is the parallels between Dionysus and Jesus.
Yay.
Yay!
Yay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a real quick, and these are bullet points, short, right?
Okay.
Real quick look at the origin of Dionysus, right? And then any possible incorporation into Christianity. Okay. So aside from the 12 gods of Olympus, right? So Zeus,
Yes.
right? Apollo, Hera, Athena, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to name them all
You don't
12
have to
because
name them.
also I'm going to get a little confused probably and use a Roman name for a god as opposed to the Greek name. But Dionysus is the son of Zeus. Now, Dionysus is known as the twice-born god, and actually even thrice-born god. And he is one of the few gods who actively comes back from the dead, right? Well, we already have one parallel right there with Christianity. So Dionysus is the youngest of the gods, but at the same time, he's also the oldest of the gods. What? His name is recorded in very ancient Greek script known as Linear B. And so this goes back to about 4000 BC. So we know that in about 4000 BC, people were worshiping the god of wine. And for those who are unaware, Dionysus is the god of wine. He was also known as the god of orgy. Now, orgy in the original sense meant ecstasy, as opposed to what we as modern people might think of that word today, right? Mm-hmm. So we have Dionysus, god of the vine, and we have Demeter, who is the goddess of the earth, right? And in particular, wheat. So we've got two earthbound deities, and they're just simply ancient. And so the origin myth for Dionysus is really confused because you have gods layered on top of gods as his worship spread throughout the ancient world. Okay, so real bullet points. Once upon a time, Zeus had congress or sex with his daughter Persephone. And incest is a very common thing among the ancient Greek gods. Actually, I'll say all the gods. So Hera, Zeus's wife, was pretty mad that Persephone was pregnant. And when Dionysus was born, Hera had the Titans, but we'll just say some monsters. Some monsters come along and tear the baby apart. The only thing that was left of the baby was his heart. And Zeus took that heart and ground it into a powder and gave it to his mistress, a human woman named Semele. Semele drinks the heart, and she becomes pregnant by Zeus, but also by drinking this heart, right? And Hera, then, Zeus's wife, is now jealous that Semele is pregnant with Zeus's child. And Hera disguises herself as a handmaiden and gets a job with Semele and starts questioning Semele as to the godhood of this man who got you pregnant. He says he's a god. Have you ever seen him do any tricks? Has he turned into an animal in front of you? Like, have any of your friends and family met him? Have his statue started talking to your dad? Because Semele had been telling everybody that she was having an affair with Zeus, right? Because why would you? And apparently it was rather consensual, which is a bit out of the ordinary for Zeus's love conquest, because typically it was a lot of sexual assault. So Semele's telling everybody around town that, hey, I'm getting it on with Zeus and I'm having his kid. And here comes Zeus's wife disguised as a servant to put a seed of doubt in Semele's mind. And Semele takes the bait. And Hera says, look, when your lover returns, when he comes to you next, have him swear on the river Styx that he will grant you a wish. And then have your wish be that you would like to see him in his true form. Because everybody knows that if a god swears upon the river Styx, which is the dividing line between life and death, that god is bound to that oath, that promise. So fantastic. This is what plays out. And Zeus says, hey, Semele, listen, if I show you my true form, you will expire because no mortal can withstand the glory of God. And Semele's like, right. Yeah, that's exactly why you won't do it. And then he says, okay. And he does. And she bursts into flame immediately, right?
Wow.
I know, sad. But a part of her that doesn't burst into flame immediately is the fetus. And so Zeus takes the fetus out of her ashen body, hanging in midair, and cuts his thigh open and puts the baby in his thigh and sews it up and gives birth to the baby from his thigh. Thigh was also a euphemism for testicle. So was it his testicle? Was it his thigh? It doesn't matter. It's a story, right? Or it matters greatly. Debate amongst yourselves.
Yes.
So Hera does not give up, right, with her hatred for Dionysus. And she does pursue him, and Zeus does try and protect him. Now, this is a very common trope with all of Zeus's kids, right? And Dionysus is this very weird Greek god in that he is born of two gods, but not fully. And he is conceived and born from a woman who dies before he's born, right? And then born from a man. And so there's a bit where Hera, in one of her many, like, I'm going to get you, Dionysus, he is torn apart by some, I believe it's the Maenads, some women who have gone mad. And he goes to Hades, but he gets out of Hades. And when he gets out of Hades, he comes back to Earth. So he's actually born 3 times. But what you have is this tie-in with the god of wine and Demeter, because Persephone is the daughter of Demeter. And here's where Greek mythology, like, this is why you have to have a college course in it, right? Because everything's related to everything. So Semele was the daughter of this guy named Cadmus, and he was a prince and actual king, I believe. But whatever, he was royal. And his house, the house of Cadmus, eventually ends up being cursed. And I'll just kind of stop there because it's crazy. But within the Dionysian stories, right, there's so many parallels with Jesus, but there's also parallels with King Arthur. So in the Arthurian legend, Arthur is hidden and goes to live with a really nice peasant man out in the woods, right, and grows up as a son. Zeus does the same thing for Dionysus and has him stay with a guy named Silenus. And there are stories as well where Zeus hides Dionysus with other mortal relatives, and he dresses up as a woman in order to hide from Hera. So we've got some of the cross-dressing happening, but that also happens with Hercules as well, because Hera's after him, right? So elements of stories get picked up and dropped into other stories, and it's all just one big mishmash. So on that point of elements of stories getting picked up and dropped into other stories, I'm going to read straight from a bit on Wikipedia. And this will be how does Dionysus get into the Bible, if he does at all? And we'll preface this by saying, as you can imagine, it is hotly debated, hugely contested. Lots of people have lots of feelings, lots of theories. I'm not here to solve all that. I could solve all that, but I'm not gonna, because I like the fight. Okay. So although the vast majority of New Testament scholars and historians of the ancient Near East agree that Jesus existed as a historical figure, there was some guy name Jesus, most likely, probably, maybe, sure, right? Most secular, non-religious historians also agree that the Gospels contain large qualities of ahistorical, legendary details mixed in with historical information about Jesus' life.
Mm-hmm.
The synoptic Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, and for our non-English speaking, the synoptic Gospels, sure, the synoptic Gospels, it just means they're the three most similar. They basically retell the same story in the same patterns in the same ways, but they're also all three present in the Bible, and there are variations. The synoptic Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke are heavily shaped by Jewish tradition, with the Gospel of Matthew deliberately portraying Jesus as a new Moses. Although it is highly unlikely that the authors of the synoptic Gospels directly based any of their accounts on pagan mythology, and I disagree with that statement right there personally, it is possible they may have subtly shaped their accounts of Jesus' healing miracles to resemble familiar Greek stories about miracles associated with Asclepius, mispronunciation, I don't care, the god of healing and medicine. Scholars have long suspected that the Gospel of John may have also been influenced by symbolism associated with the cult of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine. Dionysus was worshipped throughout most of the Greco-Roman world, and his cult was present in Palestine, Asia Minor, and Italy, and basically anywhere where they grew wine. Scholars have argued that it is highly implausible that the devout Christian author of the Gospel of John would have deliberately incorporated Dionysian imagery into his account and instead argued that the symbolism of wine in the Gospel of John is much more likely to be based on the many references to wine found throughout the Old Testament. Okay, fine. In response to this objection, proponents of Dionysian influence have argued that it is possible that the author of the Gospel of John may have used Dionysian imagery in effort to show how Jesus was superior to Dionysus. Okay, fine. Again, hotly debated. The first instance of possible Dionysian influence is Jesus' miracle of turning water into wine, and that feels like the biggest no-duh on the fucking planet, aside from, like, oh, how about the being reborn thing? Let's see. The account bears some resemblance to a number of stories that were told about Dionysus. Dionysus' close associations with wine are attested to as early as the writings of Plato and the 2nd century Greek geographer, I'm not even going to try that name, who describes a ritual in which Dionysus was said to fill empty barrels that had been left locked inside a temple overnight with wine. In an old Greek novel written by Achilles Tati, why do I even try with these names? In an old Greek novel written in the old Greek times, written in the 1st or 2nd century AD, a herdsman takes Dionysus into his home and offers him a meal, but he can only offer him the same thing to drink as his oxen. Miraculously, Dionysus turns the drink into wine. Miraculously, because he's a god. The account of turning water into wine does not occur in any of the synoptic Gospels and is only found in the Gospel of John, indicating that the author of the 4th Gospel may have invented it. A second occurrence of possible Dionysian influence is the allegory in John in which Jesus declares himself to be the true vine, a title reminiscent of Dionysus, who is later said to have discovered the first grapevine. Mark Stibbe has argued that the Gospel of John also contains parallel with the Bacchae, tragedy written by Athenian playwright Euripides that was first performed in 405 BC and involves Dionysus as a central character. In both works, the central figure is portrayed as an incarnate human deity who arrives in a country where he should be known and worshipped, but because he is disguised as a mortal, the deity is not recognized and is instead persecuted by the ruling party. In the Gospel of John, Jesus is portrayed as elusive, intentionally making ambiguous statements to evade capture, much like Dionysus in Euripides' Bacchae. In both works, deity is supported by a group of female followers. Both works end with the violent death of one of the central figures. In John's Gospel, it is Jesus himself, but in the Bacchae, it is Dionysus' cousin and adversary Pentheus, the king of Thebes, and we'll touch upon that in a hot second. Stibbe emphasizes that the two accounts are also radically different, and, of course they are, right? But there are some parallels. But this is the piece that I really like. And so, as I mentioned, Semele was the daughter of Cadmus, and Cadmus was the king of Thebes. And so one of the stories goes in showing how Dionysus is always fighting to claim his godhood, right? The Greek gods themselves often debated among themselves. So he's not really a god because, he should be a demigod. His mother was a human. Well, his mother wasn't a human. She was Persephone, whatever, right? Even the gods couldn't figure it out. So the worship of Dionysus was problematic because people would go out into the woods and trying to commune with the god, drink a ton of wine to touch the divine, right? And madness would descend upon them. And this is what occurs from Hera as well. Everybody associated with Dionysus is driven mad by Hera at some point as a curse. And typically they tear their children apart.
Wow.
It's interesting, given this thing, it's going to come up. Notice how I'm teasing you with right. I have to pay attention to what he's saying. So Cadmus is technically a cousin of Dionysus. And he doesn't feel that Dionysus is really a god, and his worship is creating so much trouble. And it's only the women, air quotes around only, but this is what's handed to us in the myths. It's only the women that go into the woods to worship Dionysus by getting drunk, right? And so this creates a problem. And in real life, even outside of myth, the Roman Senate outlawed the worship of, there was one particular holiday, and I forget what it was. And in 181 BC, we have it in the history books that this holiday was no longer allowed to be celebrated because of the mayhem it produced. So Cadmus is busy telling people Dionysus isn't a god. And Dionysus gets pissed off about this. And of course, he's in town. And he disguises himself as a whatever, we'll just say peasant, and appears before Cadmus and is like, I'll bet you'd really like to know what the women are doing. And Cadmus is like, well, this celebration's really a problem for me. And so, yeah, I would like to know. And there were some mystery cults around the worship of Dionysus as well. So some of the worship is lost to us in time. So Cadmus says yes. And Dionysus says, great. What you need to do is dress up like a woman and then go hide in this tree. And the women will be there to worship Dionysus, and then you'll see what's going on, and then you'll kind of know how to combat it. So Cadmus is hiding in the tree, and then the tree starts talking to him because it is Dionysus, and Dionysus gives him a chance, right? And says, hey, look, you know that your cousin's really a god, right? And Cadmus is like, no, he's not. And so the tree branch breaks, and Cadmus falls to the ground, and the women see a wild boar, not a human being. And they see a wild boar because they're crazy drunk, but also Dionysus is whatever, maybe he's bewitched them to see a boar.
Right.
And he is torn apart first by his mother, his own mother.
Oh my God.
The queen tears her son apart thinking that she is torn apart a wild boar. And now this goes into the whole, for anybody that's like even remotely intrigued by this, I will say the House of Cadmus basically is central and core to all all Greek mythology, and super fascinating. So the queen, whose name I forget, brings what she thinks is the boar's head into the palace to show everybody Dionysus cannot be defeated and he cannot be fucked with because his boar tried to do that. And look what we tore him apart because the god gave us the energy and the ecstasy to do that. And out falls her son's head. And of course, in true Greek tragedy, she is now sober enough to realize she has torn apart her own son. Right?
Wow.
Oh yeah, there's cannibalism in the House of Cadmus. Tantalus comes from the House of Cadmus, I believe. And I say that like everybody should be all like, oh yeah, of course that makes so much sense. So interesting, right? And one of the more interesting bits to me is that part of the worship around Dionysus that we do know involved catching a young goat, also known as a kid. I'll say tearing it apart, but chunks of meat, and stewing that in the mother's milk.
Oh my God.
And then you would consume the meat, and that would allow you to commune with the god. Why? Why, Greeks? Why? Where's this connection coming from? So anybody that knows young goats knows that, like, every now and then they just kick it up. They get crazy and they jump around and they frolic. And it was believed that that was Dionysus possessing the young goats. And so goats are associated with Dionysus. And of course, horned beasts are also associated with the devil. And we have this whole fertility of the land, herdsman kind of imagery. So in order for worshipers of Dionysus to commune with the god, they would catch a goat, which was an associated with Dionysus, tear it apart, steep it in its mother's milk, stew it in its mother's milk, and then eat that. Fantastic. In Leviticus, there is a line that says, "Thou shalt not tear apart young goats and steep it in the mother's milk and consume it." That comes straight from the worship of Dionysus, and nowhere else, right? So there is bleed over into Christianity, and it's not necessarily wrong that the Christians saw this imagery and were alarmed, but it's imagery that Christianity borrowed from the ancient Greeks. So if anybody's owed an apology, it is the pagans. End of my story, end of my lecture. Have a lovely day, world.
So what you are really saying, if you allow me to be reductive,
yes,
is the story of Jesus is largely mythological, and therefore nobody should have been offended by this depiction of the Feast of Dionysus, or even if it were the Last Supper, because Jesus is not a god in reality.
So I would say that, but I would also say, like, I get offended when people take Stephen King novels and maladapt them. And so there is an importance to the integrity of story, right?
Okay.
And so if somebody comes and whacks a story out of line with what I feel, could I be offended? I've seen some movies based on some books where I was like, what a piece of shit.
Yeah.
They should be hanged.
But that's not the reason people are upset.
No, right. They're upset.
So, I mean, if that was the reason, I would be totally on their side. But they're upset because they think Jesus is a god and important. And you can hear my dog walking behind me. I'm sorry about the noise. She has long claws.
Tear it apart, steep her in her mother's milk.
No, not Sophie. Yeah, so cool. How about the apology? You want to talk about the apology?
Let's hit that apology.
All right, cool. In response to the uproar, the Paris 2024 Organizing Committee has expressed regret for offense. In a statement, the committee acknowledged the concerns and apologized for the insensitivity displayed by the artwork. They emphasized their commitment to respecting all cultural and religious traditions and assured that they are taking steps to prevent such issues in the future. They said in their statement, "We deeply regret any distress caused by the artwork. Our goal was to celebrate artistic innovation and cultural diversity, but we recognize that this piece was not received in the spirit it was intended. We sincerely apologize to those who were hurt by it." The committee has also announced plans to review their approach to selecting and presenting art for the games to ensure that future projects align with the values of inclusivity and respect. Paris 2024 spokesperson Anne de Camp was asked about the outcry during an International Olympic Committee news conference last Sunday. "Clearly, there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group," she said. "On the contrary, I think with Thomas Jolly, we really did try to celebrate community tolerance. Looking at the result of the polls that we shared, we believe that this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry." End of apology. So how do we feel about this apology? Well, we got mixed feelings about this apology. Again, they said, "We were sincerely apologize to those who were hurt." They said, "If people have taken any offense, we are, of course, really, really sorry." So was there an expression of regret? Yes, I think so. Well, definitely. They said, "We deeply regret any distress caused by the artwork." Was there an explanation of what went wrong? Kind of, sort of. I'll say yes. Was there an acknowledgement of responsibility? Indirectly, yes. Was there a declaration of repentance? Yes. Was there an offer of repair? Yes. They said they would review their approach to selecting and presenting art. And was there a request for forgiveness specifically? No. They did say they were sorry if people had taken any offense, but not that they were requesting forgiveness from anyone. So I think for this apology, it's not a terrible apology. I'll give it a 5. And I think I accept it. I think I accept the apology. I mean, just really because I think I'm going to say, I don't know if I accept it or not, because I don't think there was a need for the apology in the first place. I don't know where we fall on apologies that should not have been made because they were not necessary. So do we accept an apology that we don't think is necessary?
I think yes, because it's being offered, right?
Okay.
And so it's a bit like if you're having dinner at somebody's house and they offer you something that you don't eat. Oh, now I'm going to fall down. But if you're severely allergic to it, right. And so, in that thing of like, you're supposed to try a little bit of everything that's offered to you.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's fair to rate the apology. And so I have been all over the place because I also don't think it should have been made.
Yeah.
I think it was unnecessary. And I think the people that are angry about it are more angry about the drag queens than they are about the possible mockery of the Last Supper. Yeah. So it's a lot of smoke and mirrors there. People are being disingenuous. It's so originally gave it a 3. And that's largely because I felt like he shouldn't even have to. And so,
it had to be made.
However, to your point, I do accept this apology. And I feel like it's a pretty average, it's an okay apology, right? My hesitancy around it all is it shouldn't have been made in the first place. And if they had come forward and said, here's why we're not going to apologize.
Yeah.
I might be like,
have some integrity.
10s across the board.
Absolutely.
Here's your gold medal. I don't know what they get at the Olympics.
It's a gold medal.
Here's your gold trophy. Here's your Oscar.
Here's your Oscar. We're in agreement on this one. So an average of whatever for this apology, but we don't think it should have been made. A 5, but we don't think it should have been made.
Yeah, because
it was necessary.
I said a 3, and then when you went through the criteria, as often happens, I oh fuck yeah, okay, so up one. So yeah, a 5. It's a pretty standard apology. Whether or not people who are offended will accept it or believe it, they're not going to believe it and they're not going to accept it.
Yeah. Agree. They're just going to be offended. So how about an apologies expected or who's sorry now? Do you have one of those this week?
I do.
Ooh.
I do. And so I have an apology expected from the Bulge belonging to Anthony Ammirati.
Yeah.
The pole vaulter who now famously jumped over a high vault pole. Like, I don't know anything about. Yes. However, Twitter has been nothing but the clip of this guy going over the pole and then his manhood, to use a word, knocking the pole off of the thing, right?
Yeah.
So he lost the Olympics, but he has gained an OnlyFans following. Like, he could be a millionaire by tomorrow. So yes, that's the only thing I could think of.
That's funny.
And I'm sure his bulge is very sorry that it knocked down the pole.
Cool.
And I guess that's the first time it's ever happened in recorded history because
I've never heard of anything.
I've never heard of it.
I've never seen it happen before, so I was surprised when I did see it.
Yes, and saw it, and saw it, and saw it, and saw it, and saw it. And it's all my feed was. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And okay, what about you? Apology expected or who's sorry now?
I have an apology expected, and it's from the San Francisco, I guess, Department of Transportation. I'm not sure, but a San Francisco woman spent nearly 15 hours over 2 days waiting to pick up her stolen vehicle from an impound lot this week. Elizabeth Shipley went to the impound lot 10 a.m. Tuesday, expecting a quick recovery. Instead, she waited until 7 p.m., hoping for an officer to arrive and process her car as recovered. No officer arrived that day. I was required to be present at the impound lot and wait in the hopes that an officer would become available, she said. On Thursday, Shipley returned to the lot and waited 5 hours before officers processed her vehicle and allowed her to take it home. Shipley said, the idea that I'm just going to have every day to get up and go to the tow impound yard and compete with whatever crisis is happening in San Francisco until they have time for me, that doesn't make any sense, she said. So that's an apology expected. Do I really expect an apology? No. Do I expect anything to change? No. But I hope my car never gets stolen, is all I have to say.
or towed or anything in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yep. I have embarrassingly been to an impound lot 3 or 4 times
Wow.
in my life to collect my car because
I think I've been once.
somebody felt he could park wherever he wanted a lot. And no lie, for a couple of years there, and I felt this way because I got away with it.
Yeah.
I parked in red zones.
Did you?
I did. Yeah. I was
You
like,
got away with it.
this
Wow.
is great. It's always free. No one's allowed to park there, but I'm only going to be 30 minutes. I'm only going to be an hour.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And sometimes all you got was a ticket. And sometimes
That's cool.
in LA, it was totally worth the $25 or $50 for parking in a red zone. Right.
Yeah.
To be able to do the thing I needed to do. It wasn't like I went to dinner for 6 hours. Right.
Right.
But yeah, I've been there. And there was somebody at the window waiting to process and to help me, so I didn't have to wait. Yeah, I had to wait time, but it wasn't like ridiculous like this poor lady went through.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for us, I guess, this week. Thanks for listening, as always. Stay cool, cucumbers.
And don't trip potato chip.
And we'll see you later.
Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Apologies Accepted, the podcast.
You can find links to the articles and the sources in the show notes.
To submit an apology or find out more, visit us at apologiesaccepted.net, where you can also find our merchandise.
We're on Twitter at Apologies Accepted.
And on Instagram at apologies.accepted.
You can support our important work at Patreon.com/Apologies Accepted.
And fuck Facebook.
Bye.
Bye.